Hi there, Anne Marie here. Today I'm building myself a new junk journal using a very basic technique with very basic supplies. So we're going to build a paper bag album today, and I'm going to use paper ephemera to kind of build the base pages. I really love paper ephemera. I love seeing, it's like literal pieces of a life, that was lived. So coming soon, I'll share specific embellishment ideas that also use these same mostly vintage paper supplies for the Giving Gratitude Hop, which is coming up on September 30th. We'll be using paper lunch bags to create the junk journal base. I took 3 of these bags and I alternated them. So the bottom flap's not on the same side because that would create bulk on just that end and make the journal lopsided. So then I fold the stack in half. I'm going to use a stapler to bind this, and I like the look of the staples, at least the top. So I'm going to wallpaper my front cover first so that I'm stapling through that paper so you can see the tops of the staples. But then I'm going to wait to wallpaper the back cover until after I've done the stapling because I do want to cover up the bottoms of the staples. I'm going to use my first featured type of paper ephemera. This is a full text page from a magazine. This is the only one that is not vintage. This is only from 2023. Once it's taped down solidly, I rough cut the edges off and I fold over the edge of the binding so I know roughly where to staple. I'm leaving about 1 inch because I'm going to have some embellishment along the binding. But I'm going to do that all the way at the end and not today. So, because otherwise it's going to be really bulky when I'm trying to actually work on the journal pages themselves. Next up is a page from this cool ledger style paper pad that I found at the Goodwill bins. It has the months of the year across the top and it's all printed in this really pretty emerald color. Definitely unique. I wanted the months to show across the top, so I'm going to wallpaper the whole 2-page spread here with it. I laid it down a little crooked, so I just folded it a little and I moved the months at the end down so they'd show. This is how I look at it. Junk journaling is a release for me from my somewhat perfectionist nature. So for a junk journal, I'm not going to care if things are wonky or they look rough or they're lopsided or kind of weird, because in the end it's all just texture and visual interest, and that's what I'm going for. There's still some standards that I'm going to hold myself to, but in general it's okay that it's going to look a little rough. It was sticking up just a little bit where it creased, so I just snipped that with my scissors and then smoothed it out a bit. All right, next up, I found a stack of junk mail type envelopes. They're like brand new though at the bins, but they're the kind with the security pattern inside and the plastic window. So I'm going to rip one open and I'm going to cover one page with the security pattern. And on this next page, we have a bottom flap. I'm not sure yet how I'm going to utilize that, but I do want to use it. So I'm going to go ahead and wallpaper both sides just so it's ready for whatever I end up doing. And on this page, I'm using a page torn from a student dictionary, around 30 years old, I think. It has kind of the typical dictionary stuff, but then there's also this red type sprinkled throughout that's like teaching how to read and use the dictionary, and I thought that was kind of cool. I did want to be sure to have all text on my page, no white space, so I trimmed off the margins before adhering it. And there's the little flippy flap. For this one, I flipped to the last 2-page spread, and I used a page from a 50-year-old math puzzle answer book. I like the crossword style pattern, and the color of the numbers is, blue, so it stands out a little bit, and all the equations, it's just something different, I felt, from regular book print. Then I flipped back and I started using a glue stick at this point. I felt like it would give more thorough coverage for some of the more delicate paper, like the sewing pattern tissue paper. For the other half of the spread, I'll use the actual sewing pattern packaging. On this page, I'm using a favorite of mine, Vintage Children's Books Illustrations. I'm very excited for this one. On the facing page, I'm using a page from an old shape note hymnal. This paper is so soft, it definitely has a high rag content. And these two little songs are ones that I associate personally with singing when I was a kid at Bible camp and in Sunday school. So to me, they seemed kind of fitting next to the picture of the children playing. All right, time for the back cover. For this one, I have a piano lesson book from the 60s. This piece of paper is over 60 years old. I wanted the music to show, so I positioned it again with that centered before I rough cut the margins off. Now everything's wallpapered, but we're not finished just yet. So we've been rough cutting the edges as we went, but everything is very uneven. And like I said, I don't mind a little bit. After all, this is a junk journal. It's going to be a little hodgepodge, but I also do want it to have a bit of a finish to it. I want it to look like a completed, intentional journal. I want to even up the edges and smooth everything out a bit. Enter sandpaper. I ran a pretty rough grit sandpaper all around the edges. To me, this also helps cement the edges more firmly into the adhesive and helps prevent lifting later on as well. Now we're going to cover everything in a thin layer of gesso. It's a junk journal, and like I said, it's wonky and weird, but I also want it to be a little unified. So covering everything in gesso will mute the backgrounds a little bit, which will make them work better as backgrounds. It will also give everything roughly kind of the same kind of color to work against, so that that's the same throughout the journal. After I gessoed each page, I dried it partially with my heat gun before moving on to the next, but at the end I left it to sit all splayed out a little to dry more before our final step. So the last thing we'll do today to prepare our paper bag junk journal is ink the edges. I've pulled out 2 inks for this, Pumice Stone Distress ink and the Charcoal Gold Interference ink. I went in first with the Distress ink because that ink pad can take a bit more abuse, and I want everything to have kind of a base layer of this ink before highlighting some corners with the Interference ink. So then I spread it all out again, I left it overnight, and then I did this final flip through in the morning. I glued one of the paper bags shut, but I left the other 2 open, so I could maybe make them into pockets. We'll see. I'm really excited about this project. I can't wait to play with it some more. And I appreciate you watching. This is a little different for my channel, so if you enjoyed this video, please leave me some feedback below. I will see you soon with a new video. And in the meantime, I hope you have a happy, scrappy week. Bye!